Michael, you're from ZN, a research company. How many people work there?
25 of us in London.
And what kind of research projects do you have?
We have a range of research projects. They range from finance on the one hand, pure finance, to technology, and that can be hard science. And what we like is where technology meets hard science in the middle, and so we're very active in smart ledgers.
Can you give me a couple of companies which fund your research?
We have a variety of companies that fund our research. We're funded by a lot of traditional financial services players, the Lloyd's market and insurance, the City of London Corporation, major banks, etc. We are funded by research technology organizations. We've done a lot of work, for example, for the Ministry of Defense and other government departments. And in the middle, we do a lot of work where we're funded typically by people who are trying to produce thought leadership. So we do have a number of providers in the cryptocurrency space who are interested in commissioning us for independent research.
Yeah. Like, can you give us an example of what kind of research project you have for the different companies?
Sure. This year alone, I think we've brought out something like about 16 reports, and it's things like how does timestamping work, how does geostamping work, what's going on in the identity space, how could you use smart ledgers for collective defined contribution pensions. Next week we're bringing out 3 reports, one on cyber, how would you produce cyber catastrophe insurance-linked securities but use a smart ledger. We'll be launching that at the Willis Centre in London, Willis being one of the larger insurance brokers. We'll be producing a report on smart jurisdictions. This is related to our long-standing work in both the global financial centers, but also green global indices. We do a lot of indices to do with centers. We're going to be looking at how does a financial center encourage the development of innovative businesses. Yeah. And finally, we're doing, personally, the most interesting report we'll be launching this month will be a third one on permissioning systems. So can we produce a deontic logic system that allows people, as we talk about people being able to hand data to one another, how do I hand that? Can I hand that to you, but you're allowed to hand it on to 3 other people? Can you only look at it for a week? Can you not hand it on to anybody unless it's a regulator? Or just take health data. So I go to the hospital, obviously it's my data, nobody can look at it without my permission.
Very useful, yeah. Very useful. So, so you have a broad amount of research, and you're really on the combination of traditional finance and also new finance, like the smart and the crypto currency. From your perspective, how did you look up at the whole way this whole blockchain and crypto and ICOs came up with a revenge in London and then also went back again?
Yeah. Well, perhaps the most shocking thing for some of your viewers will be that we did our first report on Bitcoin and blockchain in 2010, published in 2011. Now, just to remind your viewers, it was November 2008 that the blockchain paper was published, and Bitcoin was launched on the 3rd of January 2009. Yeah. So it was our little...
You had it on your radar screen quite quickly.
It wasn't just us, it was the City of London Corporation, which is over 1,000 years old. So people in London have been very cognizant of that. But I think that report was somewhat prescient. It pointed out that in fact there was nothing new about this. We had, for example, the Venn currencies, we've had a lot of other currencies out there. And whilst we find crypto interesting, as a database currently constituted, most of the models out there are economically incapable of delivering.
If you now look at the influence of blockchain as a technology, how would you assess that?
Well, what it's done is it's woken people up to the potential applications of very old technology from the 70s and 80s, and what it can actually do to help create new forms of organizations working together without central third parties being too strong.
Mm-hmm. And you think it's old ideas, you've seen it already for a very long time, but is it in its simpleness and the way it really works, and it has been hacked on the edges but not on the real core system? Is there anything interesting there, or do you think it will just be one little wave? Look, what a beautiful way to have an interview. So what will be, in 5 years from now, the consequence of blockchain, and how will it influence the financial world?
Well, what Bitcoin and blockchain have forced people to realize is that there are alternative architectures to central third parties and central databases, and they're treating it seriously. The current instantiation of both Bitcoin and Ethereum and most of the other products out there doesn't handle high volumes, high speeds, and the database writes and the energy consumptions are far too high. yes, many people are working on it, but we do not have stable solutions at that level. I think if you strip off the focus on payments and coins, though, we already have applications, and we have been delivering quite a few in the health sector. We're delivering stuff to governments like the government of Alderney on timestamping, and these applications do work. The interesting thing is they're just using very old technology, but it's convinced large traditional organizations that this stuff can work. So your point earlier, which is absolutely right, that the core ledger hasn't been hacked. Well, what is the core ledger? The core ledger is
timestamping database, a really shitty database with timestamping.
That's right. It's been a timestamp using hashing, and we knew hashing worked in the 50s. So it's just that it's now being used on a scale that people believe it. So I'm quite excited about the low-level applications, what I call the Internet of Record. It's just we've got an Internet of Comms. What we haven't had is an Internet of Record. We'll get that. And then where people go on payments and all sorts of smart contracts and tokenizing, these are all just database entries, yes. Is exciting, but I think it's that Internet of Record that's the next step.
Okay, and 5 years from now, don't you think that the energy and the amount of transactions and those kinds of things have been solved? Will it then, or do you think there are fundamental problems with the technology to be able to handle those kinds of volumes and those kinds of proof of stake?
Personally, most of the leaders in the field are pursuing architectures that I think are probably dead ends. That doesn't mean the field as a whole is a dead end. I believe there already are existing, and we've got several that are already delivering at that kind of low level of high speed, low cost, so that's there. But if you look 5 years out, I think we won't be talking blockchain anymore. No? Let me give you an example. I've got on my phone here, I have an application which can actually do lists for you of all of the ski resorts in the world. You can sort them by altitude, sure, rating, which country.
I have it too. Yeah.
It's a fantastic application. Yeah. Do you sit there and say, is your first question, did you do that on a database? No. So when we see multi-organizational database issues, we'll assume that they've been done on.
So blockchain can be in the background, but it won't be an issue anymore.
It'll be very quiet, easy to use stuff, and it'll be people picking up new areas. I think it's new. It's not displacing existing central third parties. If you have a central third party today, and you're running it well, you're almost indisplaceable. You've got a central database which is lower cost and higher speed. So Swift and many of these other players are very, very safe. But it's where these things meet on the edges. So for example, identity, anti-money laundering, KYC. The financial services industry still doesn't have an answer to that. And I think this is where this type of technology can work.
Thank you very much for these very sober and very, not too exciting, maybe boring, but maybe practical words.